Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So, good evening, everyone, and glad you were able to join us for the Monday evening discussion and reading group on love poems from God. But this evening, we're going to start with another poem, this one by June Schuster, our beloved June, called Circles of Glass. And this poem was written 46 years ago, 1975. Circles of Glass by June Schuster. Lord, my new glasses are large and thick, circles of glass, enabling me to see, heavy as milk bottle bottoms, said he, with well-meant sympathy. Only you, Lord God, know how thankful I am for circles of glass enabling me to see, to focus on the wonders of your earth, garbed in seasonal change, adorned for our eyes to see, to respond in wonder and praise to your creativity. What will I do, Lord, when the black spots on my retina make my vision a blurred morass, and useless are my circles of glass? Will I no longer see, unable to respond to thee? My God, you know how weak I am, full of good intentions now and then. But will I be resolute in my faith, with sight distorted beyond repair, reaching out in vacant stare? Will I turn away from your face, denying the fullness of your grace? Or is it possible, O Lord, when no longer my circles of glass I need, I will truly see, understanding your will for me? Perhaps there is another way of seeing and know your bounty, to see for me to see for me fearfully dependent on circles of glass, heavy as milk bottle bottoms. Alas, alas. I butchered that last stanza, so I'm going to read it again. Or is it possible, O Lord, when no longer my circles of glass I need, I will truly see, understanding your will for me? Perhaps there is another way of seeing and know your bounty, to see for me, fearfully dependent on circles of glass, heavy as milk bottle bottoms. Alas, alas. That's a gorgeous poem. Gorgeous poem. Thank you for that, June.
You're welcome. I'm glad to share.
And yes, of course, there is another way of seeing, but we have to peer within. We have to peer within to find that way of seeing. It's not a physical phenomenon. Any other comments or questions or anything that wants to be said about June's poem? Good evening, Heidi.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Hey, June.
Anyone else have anything to say about June's poem?
I just wanted to say thanks to June for providing us or giving us this wonderful treasure of like spiritual knowledge, and I really just enjoyed. I just really enjoyed it. Yeah, I'm just trying to find my words. That's all I want to say. So
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
And you know, June is still somehow seeing a bit 46 years later after she wrote that poem. She needs some appliances, but she's still able to read and enjoy the book we're studying, which I just think is beyond wonderful.
So glad. I'm so glad she saved that poem, Brother Shankara, for 46 years. It's amazing. It's a beautiful poem.
Yes. I've already asked June's permission, and she's given it to publish it in the next edition of the American Vedantist magazine,
Oh,
which it'll be out right at the last of winter this year,
that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
sometime in March.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you, Shankar. It's a gorgeous poem. And thank you, June, for sharing it with all of us too. And I just get touched, like a little emotional, you know, the first time I read that poem.
Thank
Yes,
you, dear.
it does touch our hearts.
Yep.
Is there a different way of seeing? Yes, indeed.
Yes, there is. There is.
Well, June is affirming that, and I think we can take her seriously. Heidi, would you like to read the first poem for us this evening from the book?
Sure.
An image that makes them sad.
All right. Let's see. I was reading earlier and I'm up ahead. So let's see. Let me find it here.
It's on page 117, it seems like it says here.
Oh, yes. Here we go. An image that makes them sad. How long will grown men and women in this world keep drawing in their coloring books an image of God that makes them sad? An image that makes them sad. How long will grown men and women in this world keep drawing in their coloring books an image of God that makes them sad?
Once again, we find Meister Eckhart's sly humor here. Anybody have anything to say about this rather amusing little poem? Well, I'll just remark then that there's an immediate juxtaposition here that is just. When I first read it, I laughed out loud. How long will grown men and women in this world keep drawing in their coloring books? Children have coloring books. Grown men and women drawing in their coloring books. And then the clincher, an image of God that makes them sad. We must not make. I mean, this is just a truth, and I'm sure that I'd like to hear from June about this. The idea of an image of God that makes you sad. What do you think about that, June, if you'll care to share with us?
I'm trying to think what the image of God would be.
It would make them sad?
It would make them sad.
Well, you know, a lot of people find this very judgmental God, this fierce and punishing God that is, far, far, far from a loving God. That's an image of God that would certainly make me sad if I mean, that was something that I was very graced when I was just 8 and 9 years old to be in the presence of a Methodist minister who never gave us this God that made us sad. He gave us an image of God that was loving and uplifting. And that's why everybody called him Pop Taylor. They loved him because he was like a loving father. Pop Taylor. And he shared with us his favorite hymn was that, I don't know if it's a Methodist hymn, but it certainly is a Protestant hymn. I come to the garden alone,
Oh,
while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear whispering in my ear, the Son of God discloses, and he walks with me, and he talks with me. He tells me I am his own. The joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. That was his favorite hymn. And I think that's because he also experienced that. Anyone else have anything to say about that funny turn of phrase poem? An image of God that makes them sad?
When I first read this poem, I didn't quite understand it. I wasn't sure what he meant. I thought maybe like childish things, the coloring book, childish images or whatever. But I understand a little more, after you've shared your view of it. So.
Well, notice the poem it's followed by. I'll read this one. It's very short. It's a lie. It's a lie. Any talk of God that does not comfort you. And this, we find this, as we go through this book, we find this same message from every one of these saints. If it doesn't comfort you, if it doesn't give you joy, if it doesn't lift you up, it's some construction of human minds. Hafiz talks about the tiny gods that limit human beings. But this is...
I agree with this poem, Brother Shankara. It's a lie. That is true. But the other one, I couldn't just figure it out. The previous one, the image that makes them sad until you explain to us. Yeah, never thought any image of God would make us sad.
Well, if we think of the time in which he lived,
Yeah, that is true. The way people said.
you know, it's like Saint Teresa of Avila said. She was walking through the streets of Rome, and she encountered these monks that preached gloom and doom and were vinegar faced. And she asked God, "What's with those guys?" And these aren't her words, but this is the message. What's with those guys? And he said, "Oh, I haven't tickled them yet."
Uh-huh.
Thank you, June. Yes, I haven't tickled them yet. You know,
Right.
these preachers, and my mother's father was one. He was a hellfire and damnation Church of Christ preacher, tent preacher in the California Central Valley in the time of the Depression. And I'm telling you, his God, I would have I would have run from the room. Oscar Moore, I hope you've repented. He it was one too many for my grandmother. In days when women did not divorce their husbands, she divorced him, took the kids, and led us blessedly to Pop Taylor.
Well, I can just say a disclaimer here. I love to color in adult coloring books. Okay.
Do you really? I don't know about
I
adult.
colored when I was a child, and I mean, I've just kind of taken it up in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, and it's relaxing. It's just, especially during the lockdown at first, I started coloring like crazy again.
Ah,
Yeah.
well, I think I've seen a couple of adult coloring books now, come to think of it.
Oh,
I think one of our devotees brought one time. Yes, Samantha Evans brought one time, and was coloring in it. But I don't know that those existed in Meister Eckhart's time.
I'm sure, right? Anyways.
Well, I'm glad you find joy in that. Samantha certainly does. She has this big box of crayons. I mean, I don't know, there must be 108 crayons in there, all different colors.
Well, you just can't believe the coloring pencils and the what are they called? Like to shade, and there's just so much out there.
Yeah, I bet there
I
is.
just dabble in it, but I know people who are really like, it's an art form almost. I mean, they make like a Bible with that you can color.
Wow.
With colored pencils, on the sides or the top or bottom of the page. I mean, that's what it's.
So you can do your own illumination of your Bible.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah.
How sweet. Well, anyway, we have these two poems that taken together give us this notion that God must not be something that makes us sad, and that God should be something that comforts us. It's a lie, any talk of God that does not comfort you. And I mean, that's pretty flat out from a saint to say it's a lie. Not a misrepresentation, not a distortion. It's a lie. And I don't think this is Ladinsky interpolating. I think that's what he said. June, anything to say about those two poems together?
No, except that they fit in sequence.
Yes, they certainly do. Catherine, do you have the book with you? Catherine in North and South Georgia Cats? She must be away. Okay, Haima, would you like to read this poem, The Passion in Her Whisper? And please remember to read slowly.
I will. Sure, Brother Shankara, no problem. The passion in her whisper. Only in a dream could this happen. Such terror that I have seen in eyes, and men abusing women, and cries from the pores of the sky. So, how to wake the sleeping? I was once consumed in thought, trying to make sense of a very unwanted experience, when a bird's tune called to me from a nearby limb. And this brought me understanding that audience with love and the way beauty can let us hold her in mind and arms. The passion in the earth's whisper grew so loud I woke. Now I cannot deny all is he. The passion in her whisper. Only in a dream could this happen. Such terror that I have seen in eyes, and men abusing women, and cries from the pores of the sky. So, how to wake the sleeping? I was once consumed in thought, trying to make sense of a very unwanted experience, when a bird's tune called to me from a nearby limb. And this brought me understanding that audience with love and the way beauty can let us hold her in mind and arms. The passion in the earth's whisper grew so loud I woke. Now I cannot deny all is he. Beautiful.
Yes. Would anyone like to say anything about this remarkable poem?
Yes.
As June remarked earlier, these poems they do sequence. There is what in music terms is called a through line. What is our idea of God? What is our idea? Do we have an idea of God that makes us sad? Or do we have one that comforts us? And do we have a limited idea of God or an unlimited idea of God? And over, these saints tell us that as we live before our awakening, we're living as in a dream. And terrible things happen in that dream. There's no two ways about it. Terrible things happen, and he enumerates them here. Terror in their eyes. Men abusing women, which we know is true. And children. And other helpless creatures. But then he said, something woke him. And this is the great mystery, apparently, that these saints present to us. That somehow even the terrible is an aspect of God and God's creation. Now I cannot deny all is He. How do you react to that idea? And please, let's have a discussion about this, because this really is, he set us up with the two poems before. Ladinsky found them and put them in that order, no doubt.
Will you read it again, please?
Yes, please, Haima, read it again from the beginning, if you would, please.
Oh, sure, Brother Shankara. The passion in her whispered. Only in a dream could this happen. Such terror that I have seen in eyes, and men abusing women, and cries from the pores of the sky. So how to wake the sleeping? I was once consumed in thought, trying to make sense of a very unwanted experience when a bird's tune called to me from a nearby limb. And this brought me understanding that audience with love and the way beauty can let us hold her in mind and arms. The passion in the earth's whisper grew so loud I woke. Now I cannot deny all is He.
Haima, I'm going to read something.
Sure,
The way you've been reading it, I think doesn't bring out the meaning.
Okay, sure. Go ahead, Brother Shankara.
A bird's tune called to me from a nearby limb, and this brought me understanding, that audience with love, and the way beauty can let us hold her in mind and arms. The word "that" is pointing to this. And this brought me understanding, that audience with love. The audience, the hearing, that's
Sure.
what audience means, the hearing of that bird.
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes, sir.
I find so often that people will, like, when they try to say there's no God, they're like their reasons for saying so is like, look at how terrible like the world is, look how much death there is, look how much harm comes to children and all of this stuff. And I think it's just like a very like narrow conclusion to come to, because I mean all of us on the spiritual path, we all have our doubts and we all have these moments in like our lives that really shake us and make us question our own belief in God. But like we're just whenever we have these doubts of God, we're just like in some kind of ignorance, and like we can't understand sometimes, like you said, like the nature of what this life is and what this dream is.
Yes. And the key phrase in the poem about that is, so how to wake the sleeping? He says it could only happen in a dream, these things. So how to wake the sleeping? And it really touches your heart with what he says next. I was once consumed in thought, trying to make sense of a very unwanted experience. So he was in the dream. This is what's so very difficult for us to grasp, it seems, is that both things are true at once. And yet the one is the more true and real, and that is the truth of God's existence. The passion in her whisper. June, anything, having heard it again, anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, I think um, he starts the poem by saying it could only happen in a dream. Right?
Yes, that's exactly what he says.
Yeah. Um, I'm confused. Uh, about the dream, I guess. Yes.
That's the ignorance that Aaron was speaking of. Yes, we're all confused because, and it is the position of not just these saints, but saints around the world from all of the traditions, that the life of that horror and suffering is a kind of dream, just as we dream when we're asleep and terrible things happen. And we awake and we find out, oh, that didn't really happen, though my heart may still be beating because of the experience. My heart may still be beating fast because of the experience in the dream. It didn't really happen. This is what is so hard for us to grasp from within our ignorance, is the truth that these saints are saying. The passion in the earth's whisper grew so loud, I woke. Now I cannot deny, all is he. Now, I'm not saying any of us need to agree with this. It's not, this is not dogma. This is just my reading of this poem. And the fact that as I read all of these different saints, these other 11 saints, they all, in one way or another, say the same thing, that what we see as an unawakened human being is the equivalent of the dream that we dream when we're asleep. And that when we awake, we see a greater perfection. Now, in St. Thomas Aquinas, we'll find that God says to him, there's a great blemish on my body. And it is all the hatred and suffering in the world. And St. Thomas Aquinas is saying, I want to embrace you, all of you. Aquinas is saying this to God. And God says, well, can you kiss that? If we go back to Rabia, and we just think about the life that Rabia lived. Rabia was kidnapped as a child and forced into sex slavery from the time she was a young teenager until she was 50 years old. She was held captive and forced to serve as a sex slave, a prostitute. And then apparently a patron bought her freedom. And later she awoke. And saw something different in the experiences that she had. It's very difficult for us. It requires the ability to hold two thoughts at once, as long as we're in the waking, ordinary state of consciousness, which the saints say is a form of dream awareness. If nobody else has anything to say about this, we can move on. I don't want
Yes,
to insist on my opinion.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, sir.
I think like one of my favorite aspects of the Gita is it paints this picture of the confusion we all face in our daily lives like so well. If you think of how Arjuna must have felt after the battle, after so many of his family and comrades had passed away. So
Yes, there's this story of them actually visiting one of Arjuna's teachers, his archery teacher, Drona, who was dying. It's When Aaron speaks of Gita, he's speaking of Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, which is it's a rough parallel to the New Testament of Christ. It's a distillation of all of that came before, and its fulfillment in the teachings of a figure named Krishna, who lived approximately 5,000 years ago. That's what Aaron's talking about. Thank you, Aaron, for all of your contributions this evening.
And Shankara, I think it's interesting the contrast, like so much terror that they describe, you know, the horrible things in the dream that he saw,
Mm-hmm.
how horrible that is. And then when he was consumed in thought with these unwanted experiences, something so small as a bird, the bird's song or tune,
Mm-hmm.
you know, by a nearby limb kind of brought him out of that.
Mm-hmm. And how does he describe it? When a bird's tune called to me from a nearby limb, and this brought me understanding, that audience with love, and the way beauty can hold us in her mind and arms. That audience with love. There is there is the passion that he
Right.
speaks of. The passion in the earth's whisper grew so loud I woke.
So it's the passion, the love, you know, and the beauty that trumps or rules out the terror.
Trumps. I love the word trumps. Not has nothing to do with Donald Trump.
Well, I hesitated to say that because of him, but
No, but I really like it. Trumps it. That's it.
Yes.
It is somehow all of the other, as God says to Aquinas, who I think is the next saint poet that we'll study. It's a blemish. It's not the reality in its totality. It's a blemish on that. And for us to focus on that, it doesn't mean we ignore it or condone it. No, it calls to our compassion, and we must respond in a compassionate and loving way to suffering, as clearly Meister Eckhart did. If you read about his life and his sermons, he was compassion itself. It's just very difficult for us. It continues to be a struggle, apparently, as long as we're embodied. The great saints that write about that and talk about it. There's a great book called The Crest Jewel of Discrimination, and it talks about how even after illumination, there has to be great care, great awareness. And that's why the spiritual path is called a razor's edge. You know, we're walking on that razor's edge like someone walking on a tightrope, holding that balance pole of our faith and our experience and knowledge of the divine as the balance pole that keeps us on that tightrope. The wonder about it is, about the razor's edge is, a tightrope may be hundreds of feet above the ground. The razor's edge is only a few inches above the ground, so we don't fall into an abyss if we fall off the razor's edge. But now I'm sermonizing. Anything else to say about all this? Shall we move on? Okay. What Ladinsky / Eckhart does is answer our questions in the next poem. Heidi, would you like to read To See as God Sees?
Sure. To see as God sees. Excuse me. It is your destiny to see as God sees, to know as God knows, to feel as God feels. How is this possible? How? Because divine love cannot defy its very self. Divine love will be eternally true to its own being, and its being is given all it can at the perfect moment. And the greatest gift God can give is his own experience. Every object, every creature, every man, woman, and child has a soul, and it is the destiny of all to see as God sees, to know as God knows, to feel as God feels, to be as God is. To see as God sees. It is your destiny to see as God sees, to know as God knows, to feel as God feels. How is this possible? How? Because divine love cannot defy its very self. Divine love will be eternally true to its own being, and its being is giving all it can at the perfect moment. And the greatest gift God can give is his own experience. Every object, every creature, every man, woman, and child has a soul, and it is the destiny of all to see as God sees, to know as God knows, to feel as God feels, to be as God is. Yes, our answer right there, huh?
That's
like
exactly it, Heidi.
I like how they do that.
Yes. And how is this possible? How? Because divine love cannot defy its very self. Divine love will be eternally true to its own being, and its being is giving all it can at the perfect moment, just like that bird song that he talked about in the previous poem. That was the perfect moment when he was in this despair, clearly, this despair, trying to make sense of a very unwanted experience. Something happened in that moment. And of course, I'm sure most of you are aware that this is the last of the poems of Eckhart. This is his final word, so to speak, at least as organized by Ladinsky. Any of you want to know more about Meister Eckhart, by the way, you can go on YouTube and find his very well read recordings of some of his sermons. And for one woman that I know, she used to come here. It no longer does, but stays in touch. She says that that is now her spiritual home. She just listens to Meister Eckhart's sermons. And that is her way of being with the divine. Anything else about this incredible poem?
This poem makes perfect sense, Brother Shankara. It's everything is what we have been reading and about Vedanta, the experience of silence and meditation. He said, and the greatest gift God can give is his own experience. We can only experience, we cannot explain the meditation to anybody. Only we can experience it. That's very, very truly touching. It's very true.
Yes.
I like it.
Thank you, Haima. That's it.
Touching.
And as he says,
Yes.
both in this poem and in the previous poem,
Yes.
different ways, something happens at the perfect moment.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
if we just keep our faith and keep seeking, at some point, if we remember reading a poem a little bit back, that those tiny blinders that are on our eyes will be removed.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
Thank you.
Katrina, are you there?
Yes, good evening, everyone. A little late dropping in today, but I wanted to hear some of the poems.
Well, I'm just glad you're with us. I was just wondering what you made of all of this discussion, this reading and discussion that you just heard.
I heard the last of it. I didn't hear the entire poem.
I see. Okay. Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just wanted to hear from you. But if you haven't heard enough to say anything, well, that's certainly fine.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. What I did hear is the comment that you made, and that is that which was appropriate for me at this time, and that is basically to keep the faith, and at the perfect moment things will happen for you. So that was good for me to hear at this time.
Well, you
So
know,
thank you.
that doesn't come from me, Katrina. That comes from every one of these poets in this book. And for that matter, all of the great teachers. You know, that at the perfect moment, you will know as God knows.
Oh, I thank you. It was good hearing that tonight. I needed that.
Good. Anything else from anyone before we move on to St. Thomas Aquinas? We read some poems that did indeed have a through line. This ending of Eckhart was quite remarkable. Bart, are you there? Do you have the book open?
Yes, I do. I do, brother. Hello. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste and joyous greetings to you.
Hmm.
Um,
Greetings.
as they say in Germany, Grüß Gott, the southern Germany.
Grüß Gott.
Grüß Gott, the greetings of God.
Mhm.
So would you like to read for us the biography of St. Thomas Aquinas? We have just about time enough to read
Okay.
the biography.
Mhm.
Then we'll just go on next week to Aquinas's work.
Okay, certainly. All right, for St. Thomas Aquinas, Ladinsky has given us a quote, 3 quotes. Because of my compassion, the sun wanted to be near me all night, and the earth deeded her fields to me, and all in heaven said, we have voted you our governor. Tell us your divine mandate. And I did, and God will never revoke it. Nothing in existence is turned away. Okay, Thomas Aquinas,
Before you go on,
it was 1 quote, I'm sorry.
no. I just want to note that the parallel between nothing in existence is turned away
Hmm.
and every object, every creature, every man, woman, and child has a soul, and it is the destiny of all to see as God sees, to know as God knows, to feel as God feels, to be as God is.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what Aquinas is saying.
Hmm.
Nothing in existence is turned away. I celebrate that from the bottom of my heart.
It's beautiful.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption, but I just
Oh, no,
note that parallel.
that's okay. I just, in all of my studies, it's interesting how the church was so threatened by Meister Eckhart, but he's speaking with the same voice as Aquinas, and Aquinas is just one of the major, they call it the Thomistic school of scholasticism, and he was so widely accepted. And it's just the contrast between the two, except they're speaking the same language,
Right.
which is the language of the divine. And so, okay, Thomas Aquinas from 1225 to 1274 is widely regarded as the greatest Catholic theologian. One could say that he was a spiritual master, always striving to reveal to others the path to Christ. It is said that toward the end of his life, he asked Jesus to pass judgment upon one of his books. And Jesus replied, you have written well. Continue to write whatever your heart wishes to express. Thomas was born in Aquino, Italy, near Naples, into a noble family. At the age of 5, he was sent to the Benedictine Abbey of Monte Cassino to receive his basic education in the hope that he would someday become an influential abbot. At an early age, he began to develop a great and lasting love of the scriptures, especially the Psalms, and at times he revealed what was to become his hallmark by stunning his teachers with profound questions and insights about God. Here, he also developed a great love for meditation and solitude, which he later described as the greatest opportunity offered to a human being, a life of contemplation of the wonders of creation and God. At the age of 17, he became a Dominican novice in a mendicant order. This order, which was considered countercultural, had been started by a contemporary of St. Francis of Assisi and based on the principles of poverty, preaching, and complete faith in God. Not long after this, Thomas's brothers, at the direction of their mother, kidnapped him and imprisoned him for nearly 2 years within the family castle to force him to disavow his radical mendicant way of life, his way of begging, refusing various temptations offered to him. He spent his time memorizing the scriptures. Finally, his family relented and allowed him to return to the Dominicans. After further studies in Naples, he was appointed as a master of the University of Paris in 1257. During this time, he came to embrace the long suppressed Aristotelian texts on metaphysics. These texts helped develop in him the ability to present the profound in simple terms, while also creating in Thomas a reverence, an almost scientific approach to every moment of time and every creature and form in existence. His experience became all his experience became that all in creation were revelations of God's infinite, eternal, expanding being. Over the next 16 years, he composed nearly 100 truly remarkable works. This prolific output is all the more remarkable in light of the numerous stories of Thomas Aquinas often being absorbed in states of enchantment and being completely unconscious of his surroundings or his actions, even to the point of putting inedible items into his mouth at the dining table, sort of Christian samadhi, right?
Mhm.
And so near the end of his life, he had a divine revelation while celebrating Mass in the chapel of St. Nicholas in Naples, which caused him to state, I can no longer write, for God has given me such glorious knowledge that all contained in my words are as straw, barely fit to absorb the holy wonders that fall in a stable. 3 months later, he died.
So we'll read that again next week
Mm.
to start. But does anyone have any thing to say? Any comments or questions about it as it was read?
I have a quick comment, Brother Shankara.
Yes.
When he read that at the direction of their mother, Thomas's brothers kidnapped him, it just
Mhm.
reminded him of Bhakta Prahlada, where father thought he was so fanatic about Narayana, Krishna, and tried to put him through hell.
Yeah.
His own son here, the mother did it to the son. So
Yeah. Well, it wasn't as bad for Aquinas as it was later for Saint John of the Cross, but
Yeah.
it was bad.
Exactly.
These temptations that he was offered, you can imagine, were temptations of the flesh,
Yes.
trying to tempt him away from this,
Yeah. Yes.
what was regarded as a very radical
Yeah.
way of being a monk.
I know. That's terrible. Thank you. It's very inspiring. His
Thank
story
you.
is very inspiring too.
Oh, it is.
It's very inspiring. Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you, dear. Anything else from anyone about what was read about Aquinas?
I have a question, but it's not about the poems. Okay. So, not all of us are part of, the other groups here with you, Shankara. So
Yes.
I'm wondering how, is it Swayam? Swayam is doing? She was in the hospital.
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking. Bless your sweet heart. Yes, I meant to mention that, and it just went out of my mind because of reading June's poem, or I shouldn't make excuses. There's no excuse. No, Swayam is doing very well. She's was up walking and talking today in the hospital. Of course, no one can be with her because of the virus, so none of her family is with her. But the reports are that she was up. They got her up walking, and she was talking, and she'll if everything is all right in the morning, she'll go home tomorrow.
Oh, good.
But thank you so very much for asking, Heidi. How sweet of you to think of her. Yes, she wanted to be with us tonight, we were told, but it wasn't likely. And of course, she wasn't able to come. I'm sure they're keeping her, still pretty quiet. So,
Right.
Thank you, Shankar. I was going to ask you to last. Thank you so much.
well, Heidi, it was very sweet of you to remember and to ask. Yes, Swayam she came through her triple bypass surgery, apparently very, very well.
Yeah, because they were having trouble figuring out just how they were going to do that operation, right?
That's exactly right. And it took apparently a little panel of expert doctors to figure out how to go about it. But apparently, once they got it figured out, they did it exactly according to their plans, and it went very, very well. That's what we're told.
Well, she
And
inspires me if she's in the hospital in the bed awaiting surgery and she still tunes into poetry night. I mean,
yeah,
I think that's inspiration for us all to take away.
she is among our congregation. She is one of the more intense devotees. She's one of those who is clearly, she takes seriously the idea that Christ said, "Those who drink from my mouth shall not taste death." Um, Swayam has taken that to heart and wants to achieve redemption, salvation, liberation, call it what you want, in this lifetime. And if I were a betting man, I'd certainly bet on her. Anything else about anything at all? That was very sweet, Heidi. Thank you.
Yes, I just thought myself about like how I can achieve salvation, if you want to call it that, in this life. Also, any of us, I'm sure, because we're here, have that opportunity.
That is the promise that the great teachers say. If you're drawn this direction and you take seriously, you have faith, in other words, in what they say, that they will, call it what you will, save you, liberate you, redeem you, whatever it is. And yeah, thank you. That's right.
I'm glad to hear that's why I'm doing well. Thanks.
Yeah. Anything else from anyone? When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind and the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with love in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. No, you'll never walk alone. So good night, everyone. Until next time. So it's just always so good to be with you on Monday night like this. And we'll start next week by reading Aquinas's biography, little short biography again, and then talk about it a bit because there's some truly remarkable information in it. And his assertion, which is from one of his poems at the beginning in those quotes that Bart read, is that no one of us will be left behind.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Good night, everyone.
Thank you and good night, everybody. Thank you, Brother Shankar.
Good night. Good night, June.
Shankar.
Good night, everyone.
Night,
Good
June.
night.
Love you, sweetie. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.